Thank you. So today there was a request actually for a topic and for transforming thoughts, for transforming negative and waste into something that can be an energy that's useful for us and that can help us to live our life more peacefully and happily. Is that right? Mundal, you want to elaborate on the topic that requested?
Radha, yeah, that's the thing. It's just uh, when we try to focus, we have multiple thoughts coming in, and just to make sure that not to get distracted by the fact that we have not been able to optimize on our time because it takes time. So you have the best bet to give us insight into it.
Mhm. Okay, so based on that, I have I'll share a few thoughts, and we'll do a little exercise together as well. And I don't know how it went for you in terms of observing your thoughts in that last minute. No, it's very interesting to see what did you notice. No, so maybe I, to start with, might have noticed what was happening on the screen, or what the picture was like, what the plants behind me. And then little by little, as I continue to observe myself thinking, the level of my thinking becomes more subtle. So instead of noticing things that are outside, which I can see through my physical senses, I can then begin to notice what's going on inside. So, in other words, how I'm feeling, what's the speed of my thought, um, what's the level of my energy, for example. So, I can begin to notice. And I think that this is the very first step if we want to change the things that are happening within us in terms of the quality of our thoughts. The first thing that I need to learn how to do is to observe and to be able to verify what is actually going on. What am I actually thinking? Can you remember what you thought in the last half hour? Not just how many thoughts you had, but what the quality of your thoughts. Maybe before we look at that, but just, I don't know if you remember the 4 kinds of thoughts. Remember we did that in one of the sessions where we looked at the 4 different categories of thought. And so it's very useful to have these very clearly about as to what they are and examples of each of them, so that we can actually then identify what we're thinking at any given moment. So do any of you remember the 4 kinds of thoughts? Test, surprise test. Anyone? Hundal mentioned one of them. It's quite easy, actually.
Rather at a loose end right now.
Was that?
Very honest. I said at a loose end right now. Sorry.
No, okay. So just very simply, the 4 kinds of thoughts are positive thoughts, negative thoughts, necessary thoughts, and wasteful thoughts. So it's knowing that these are 4 categories, and then of course within each of these categories there's a whole variety of of different states and stages that each one of these can come in. But the thing is that when you have an example of maybe a negative thought, so A negative thought, very simply, that carries the energy that pulls you down, that destroys your peace, destroys your courage, or destroys your ability to think clearly. So negative thoughts tend to weigh us down. They tend to cloud our consciousness. And they basically are very, very destructive. So a negative thought, which about the self or about the people around or about the world, that, for example, about the world, that the world is just getting worse and worse and it's just going down the drain, and that's going to be the end of all of us. I mean, this is a typical thought maybe that many people are thinking in this moment. And so, whereas some of it might be true in the sense that what is it that has become more degraded, for example? Even though negative thoughts might have an element of reality in it, but the energy that they carry is something that brings us down, that pulls us down. So it's not worth thinking negative thoughts. We need to think realistic thoughts, but from a positive perspective. So, so for example, even though the situation is becoming more difficult and there are more and more restrictions, I would like to offer a contribution of peaceful energy and whatever I can do on a practical level. That every drop counts. So it's I can create whatever thoughts that are relevant for you, that work for you, and this is why we need to do it individually. It's an individual. There's no general affirmation that works for everyone. They need to be very specific and very tailor-made, that I make myself for myself. And so once we're aware of what happens when we think a lot of negative or even wasteful thoughts. And so wasteful thoughts, how are they different from negative thoughts? Very simply, there's a whole lot more of them. And they tend to go round and round in circles. They're irrelevant, unproductive, usually repetitive, and thoughts that include a lot of worry and tension and are speculative. So, hypothetical things for the future or even for something that's happened, assumptions. So, a lot of this comes into the energy of wasteful or unproductive, irrelevant thinking. And so, I mean, just to think about it, just to reflect, how do you know when you've been thinking negatively or you've been having a lot of wasteful thoughts? How can you tell? How can you tell it's different from maybe other times when your thinking has been peaceful or it's been fairly, in a sense, filled with maybe necessary thoughts, but without too much waste? So what happens when you think negative and wasteful thoughts? Any ideas? Have you noticed what happens to the mind? How do you feel? What goes on even in your body or in the quality of your interactions, your thoughts, words, and actions? What happens to that? Have you noticed whether you feel light?
You start feeling very low when you have these negative thoughts. You suddenly feel an energy drain.
Right, exactly. So energy drain is the first thing that happens. And of course, what happens when your energy is low, we need to fill it, because we need energy often we need a lot of energy for certain things. Relationships take a lot of energy. And so if my energy has been drained by overthinking, and especially with negative or wasteful thoughts, I'm not going to have the energy that I need in order to interact with people to the standard that I want. So that's the first thing that happens, in fact, is that our energy gets drained. And of course, the result is that maybe I get more irritated, I get more angry, and then I feel bad about that, and I wish I could do something different. And so then I feel discouraged, and then I try to make myself feel better by doing certain things, maybe certain habits, and it kind of goes on like that, you know. And so it's a little bit like a vicious circle of negative thoughts and waste thoughts. And so sometimes the best place to begin to break that cycle is just to simply observe your thoughts, you know, almost as they're happening. And this is something we're capable of, you know, as human beings with our minds and our intellect. We have the possibility, the capability of observing ourselves thinking, you know. So I can know what I'm thinking at any given moment if I choose to look. And so this is a very powerful ability, because when I can see what I'm thinking, I will then be able to see either the loss that it's causing me or the profit that it's bringing me. And when I realize that, you know what, these thoughts are just draining me, and I, I know that I want enough peaceful and loving energy so that I can, you know, I can be clear. I can have a clear mind and a clear head for an important interaction that I have. So it's worthwhile making the effort to change the direction of my thinking. And once I change the direction, so I don't want to stop thinking, because actually, you know, we need to think, and it's part of our humanity, it's part of our consciousness to think. But it's just a question of changing the direction and changing the quality of my thoughts. So if you think about, you know, driving a car, that if you've come, you know, you suddenly the road, you know, you've come to, there's an obstacle in front of you, so, and you're not able to brake, so you're not able to stop. What do? You know, you turn, you move in another direction, you swerve in another direction. And so this is the thing, is that even if we can't apply a brake, in the sense that we can't stop our thoughts, but we can steer them, we can move them in another direction of our choice, you know? And so this is where the intention comes in very useful. But first I want to do a little exercise on this thing of observing our thoughts. So it's like a little meditation. And I'm going to ask you to, if you want, close your eyes for this particular meditation, because it's like a very specific visualization. So so we're going to just find a comfortable position. And as you relax, as you sit peacefully, I'd like you to remember today the moment that you woke up, the moment that you came into consciousness. I'm awake. So just go back to that and just remember, think about how you were feeling, maybe on a physical level, and also on a mental and emotional level. Just go back to that moment at the beginning of your day. Maybe the body was stiff, or maybe you woke up feeling very awake and ready to start the day. Maybe you woke up wanting to continue to sleep. But just observe without making any judgments. Just observe as a camera, video camera might observe neutrally as it was, as it happened. And then as you began to prepare for the day, maybe you had something to drink, or you sat for some meditation, or you interacted with some people. You refreshed yourself. Whatever it was, just go back into your memory, into your mind in that moment. And remember, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? What was your mood like? And then, as you started your day, moving around, interacting, maybe working, whatever your tasks were in the morning until before lunch, how did you feel? Just observe neutrally, without judgment. What were you thinking? And then, as you had your meal, maybe interacting with others, maybe alone, what were you thinking? Can you identify how you felt, your mood, your consciousness? And then during the afternoon, as you continued your activities of the day, what was the pace of your thoughts and the direction of your feelings? And then, as you prepared to connect here to this meeting, what were you feeling? What were your thoughts? With what energy did you become present? And then now, in this moment, how do you feel? What is the pace of your thoughts and the quality? Just to observe, just to notice what's going on. Thank you. So, this is a simple exercise to just to notice our thoughts and feelings from the moment we woke up until this moment here and now, as the first step, shall we say, to begin to change the quality or to do something about the quality of our thinking. So how did that go? Were you able to observe? Was it easy or was it quite tricky? To identify or even to remember. Sometimes it's not that easy to remember. Sometimes you can't remember what did I do this morning, let alone what I thought, you know.
Rather, relatively very easy, wasn't difficult.
Okay.
But while focusing, again, multiple thoughts were coming in, which
Hmm.
were technically not relevant to what the exercise we were carrying out.
Right, right. Okay, so you were observing those, you know, and that's the first important step, you see, is when we are doing an activity inside, even a concentration activity. That's when I notice the moments where I'm not concentrated. And that's very useful, you know, because often it happens is that we get distracted, but we don't even realize that we're distracted. And only maybe quite a way down the line that I think, oh gosh, why am I thinking all these thoughts? And where did all that start? And so just the act of observing and noticing that, okay, exactly at that point, I went off at a tangent. And this is something that's very, very important, because when I observe my mind, then just the act of observing changes the way I think. You know, what happens in quantum physics is that it's very, very difficult to do experiments because the observer, so the scientist, the observer, the state of that person affects the experiment. And so whether the particles are moving, whether it's moving, you know, as a particle or as a wave, will be determined by the quality of the consciousness of the observer. And so how to do experiments. And so this is a very, very interesting thing, is that is visible on a physical level with, you know, with quantum science and quantum physics. But the same thing happens on an internal level, is that because I, the consciousness, am the one that's observing my mind and what's going on in my mind, which is my thoughts and feelings, then depending on my state of being, the quality of my thinking can change. You know? So if I, for example, I, in my consciousness, I have this intention to be peaceful. And I say, okay, I really want to be peaceful. I want to refresh my energy. I want to experience the calm and the silence. And so I step inside, and what do I find is my mind that is full and overflowing of maybe a lot of waste thoughts and worries and tensions and troubles and, you know, lots of things that are basically heavy energy. So what I need to do is to stay strong on my intention, remember my intention, and continue to observe. So I observe, just like watching, just like taking care of a child, you know, that is crying or that is uncomfortable. You do everything you can to make the child uncomfortable, and then you just have to wait till it stops crying. You know? And so this is what we do with our mind. It's not that we're crying, but we're crying out, maybe for attention, for some sort of solutions, or something, some need that's not being fulfilled. And so worry comes because my sense of security is very unstable, for example. And so I need security. I'm calling out for that sense of stability, or some certainty, or some answer, some solution, some reply. And when I'm not getting it, then lots of waste thoughts. What will happen? Is that going to happen? Will it work out? What will they say? What will be the result? Etc., etc. And so in that moment, if I can stay stable in the consciousness of who I am and my intention in particular. So my intention is that I want to experience peace. I am a being of peace. I want to be refreshed. And I come inside and I find anything but peace. I find complete mayhem going on. And so what do I do? So at that moment, it's a question of observing and just watching. And a very key word here is detached observer. No? So the only way I can be detached is when I do not identify myself with my own thoughts. So my thoughts are my creation, they are not me. They represent a state of my consciousness, but they do not represent my consciousness itself. And so when I can just step a little bit, and this is the power to withdraw as well, in the sense that I detach myself from what I'm thinking, that I am not my thoughts. So if I have a lot of worry, thoughts filled with worry, then it's thoughts filled with worry. It's not I am worried. No, I have many thoughts that are filled with worry about the future, worry about what's happening now, worry about a certain issue. And even worry is basically fearful. So I'm concerned about what's going to happen, but I am not my worry. And so this kind of a detached observer will make all the difference in calming the mind down. And then I can see then other thoughts that come in, maybe completely at another tangent. So nothing to do with the worry, but maybe some other issue that, the quality of a relationship that I have with, my children or my family, my relatives, something that has been an issue for me, or something about myself. So another aspect may come up. And so again, let it come up. So if there are multiple thoughts, multiple streams of thoughts, it doesn't matter, because I am there to observe. I need to accept that this is what's happening. And it's worthwhile sometimes just writing down what are the main threads of my thinking, because that's when I know what is important for me in this moment, what's calling my attention. So we need to give value to even our waste thoughts. So in the sense, our thoughts that are bugging us, that keep coming back, and say, okay, these thoughts are not relevant, but what is the need behind it that is not being fulfilled, and therefore I find myself generating all these um, unproductive thoughts or negative thoughts, whatever it may be. So this thing of observing, and if you can practice, it's like just catching yourself at any moment and saying, okay, in the last half hour or in the last 5 minutes, what was I thinking? So it's just like saying, okay, I open the container of my mind and I see what's in there. Was I having positive thoughts? Which ones? Necessary thoughts, waste thoughts, or negative thoughts? Or any kind of shade in between. And so this is the way, the first step, at least I find very useful, to begin to bring about a change and to begin to harness the energy of my mind, because it's a very powerful energy. And it's a pity to just let it, flow through our fingers, flow through our mind and be drained. That we, maybe if money is wasted or food is wasted, sometimes people get very, very angry, with that. But what about when my thoughts are wasted? That it's actually even more powerful than any kind of physical resource. because all of that abundance will come from the abundance and the richness of my thinking and the good use. This word safal karna is when my thoughts are used in a worthwhile way. That is what brings safalta, success. And so it's the same thing with physical resources. When my time is used well, then I am successful. When my resources are used well, then I'm successful. So in the same way, when my thinking is used well, then I can be successful in my, in actually bringing about a change. And one interesting thing is that most of our thoughts or the way we think usually functions in a pattern. So it's a little bit like a habit. So we might be aware of our habits in terms of what you do, at midday, or what you do. Maybe you take a nap after lunch, or you go to bed at a certain time, you wake up at a certain time, you eat certain things, you do and you don't do certain other things. And so these are all habits, and it's exactly the same thing with our mind, is that we tend to think in a habitual way. So it's actually not that difficult to identify the patterns of our thinking. It's subtle, and that's why we need to want to see them, because otherwise they flow like an underground river, that it just keeps going and you don't even see it. Maybe someone will tell you, yes, there's an underground river underneath your house, but you don't see it, and so it's as if it's not there. But actually, our thoughts that are flowing in a certain direction and taking us in a certain direction. So it's really important to observe, what am I thinking? Do you know what you're thinking? And are you able to choose that? And if not, why not? It's your mind. And so, of course, it's easier said than done, because the habits are very strong. They are old habits that die hard. And so it's just a question of observing and checking what's my intention and being determined with that. So if my intention is, I want to experience peace, I want to refresh my energies. And so all I need to do is remind myself of that intention, stay in my intention, and let that energy open up. Observe the thoughts that are coming as if they are someone else's thoughts. So as a detached observer watching a screen, without getting into the feelings of the thoughts. So I don't know if you have any comments or anything you want to share. And I have something to read as well from Dadi Janki about our thoughts. But first I wanted to see whether you wanted to clarify something or add something from your experience, or whether you can relate to that.
Hi guys, hi Radha.
Hi, Sahil.
Sorry I joined late. Just what you've been speaking about, I think it's a wonderful practice. And I think we spoke about this the last time I was on, about just keeping your awareness and consciousness. And when you speak about habits, for example, and I've found, obviously, I've learned a little bit where in your day, when you're tackling any particular situation, whether it's a call, whether it's a meeting, anything of that kind, if you switch off your awareness even slightly, you can go into old patterns and old habits. So, and like I shared last time, I'm trying every day now to kind of be supremely aware of every small action of mine, every word I speak. It's not easy. It takes a lot of energy. And there's more than enough times when I'm performing certain actions subconsciously. But I'd just like to share again, I've had recent kind of calls where I automatically go into default mode, facing habits where, either frustrations boil over and so on and so forth. So I'm far more aware in those situations which come up again of not letting those frustrations boil over. And it's, I think, a great way of actually changing habits, as you mentioned, because those are deep in your subconscious. And as long as we stay aware, I think you're going to slowly start changing those habits. There's a wonderful book called The Power of Habit, where I think they go and say about how it takes about 30 days to let go of a bad habit. And if anyone's kind of trying to get rid of habits, I strongly suggest you read that. It's a really good read. But that's all I really wanted to share. But thank you. This is really a great practice. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Sahil. Great. Anyone else?
Radha, I was going to ask you the same.
Wonderful.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hello. Oh, after you, Amarjot, I'll speak after you. You go ahead. Hello. Yeah, should I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so Radha, it was a wonderful way, the way you explained about our thoughts, because, I observed my day today and I realized that, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can, yeah.
So I observed my day and I realized that there are so many thoughts, so many, it's like a jumble of thoughts, and I don't know how easy it's going to be, because you're doing one thing and suddenly there's another thought coming in, and I think it's very important, like you said, to sit down and observe that why a particular thought is coming. And I think I'm going to practice that and see that why so many lots of wasteful thoughts are coming, and sometimes negative thoughts are coming. And I think I'm going to now observe and then maybe share with you how it goes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, Hundal.
Radha, thank you very much for what you shared with us, and a special thanks to Sahil Patel also, because my next question was, how much time would you really take to start changing your thought process? It's easier said than done. So some way he has given a realistically each one to his own, but appropriately 30 plus, give and take some more up and down if you focus more consciously to change a particular habit, or at least start seeing a change in the trend. So found it interesting.
Great, thank you.
Hundal, I just want to jump in.
Please.
Hundal, I'll just add one part. I mean, the 30 days bit is what the book says. I found recently, if you put your mind to it, there are some habits you can let go in literally a day if you're super aware about it. Because one of the things I started doing about two weeks ago, maybe a little longer, well, the first thing I used to do is wake up, is pick up my phone, check what messages came the night before, etc. So now I don't even check messages until at least a couple of hours after I've woken up usually. So, and I'm making it a conscious effort to do that. And because I'm aware of it when I go to sleep, I'm aware of it when I wake up, that's an easy habit to break. But I'm just saying that there'll be different habits, might be longer, different habits might be faster. But as Radha says, I find the more awareness you can keep, and it can be tiring, I think, and difficult. But the more awareness you can keep, the things you want to change, the habits you want to change, you'll find going. I think you'll find changing sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Yeah, another point was rather adding to what you're saying is, in the earlier classes, once Radha said, is how strong you feel about it. That also helps you to focus on a particular thought process. So how quickly or how much time you consume is again one of the factors is how determined or how adamant, or you can use that word, to get over that particular speed break or whatever you like to put it.
Yes, in fact. Yes, great experiences. So I'll read just this piece, and it's by Dadi Janki from her book Companion of God, and it's called The Quality of Thoughts. So this an enlightened person understands that there is nothing to be gained by thinking about others. Pure thoughts and feelings will do all the work. There is no need to think any further. An interesting criteria for checking is how much am I thinking about other people, whether in a good or in a bad way, but how much are my thoughts directed towards other people? The quality of your thoughts will affect your spiritual endeavor, so keep checking them. If you don't, then at some point your mode of thinking will become quite ordinary, no longer spiritual. And the sign of this is that your mind begins to race and you start reacting sensitively to little things. You become vulnerable not just to the opinions of others, but even to your own way of understanding, limited way of understanding. Thoughts can be your own best friend or worst enemy. It's up to you. So this is what Dadi Janki has to say about the quality of thoughts. So we'll now have a meditation. And again, just find a comfortable position, maybe adjust the way you're sitting, or so that there's no tension in the muscles, or as little as possible. Take a few deep breaths to oxygenate the body, the brain, so that you're fresh and present and can notice what's going on. So as my body becomes quiet, I take that one strong step inside. That one step leads me and takes me from a physical consciousness to a consciousness that is subtle. And I can become aware of the invisible, the energy of my mind. I become aware of myself as the living consciousness, the light. The soul that animates this physical costume. I see myself as a bright spark of awareness. Within that spark, that constant light, there is my consciousness, my inner world, the essence of my being, who I am, beyond my roles and responsibilities, even beyond my karma. It is who I am originally, a being of pure, peaceful, loving, powerful energy. And from this stable position, I observe my mind, just as if I'm looking at a screen on a device. I see what my mind is seeing. I notice what it notices. I observe what it feels, what it wants. I observe the speed of my mind and the quality of my thinking. As I observe with a benevolent eye, as a detached observer, stable in my peaceful energy, I watch this energy of peace resetting my mind. So I don't need to do what I've always done with my thinking, but I can choose something different. I can make a determined thought. The more I see how worthwhile it is, the more powerful my determination will be. As I observe my mind, maybe I notice many tangents, many distracted thoughts. I accept them as they are. And at the same time, I check my position of the detached and loving observer. I am not my thoughts. I am not my mind. It is my instrument through which I can express the quality of my consciousness. Who I am is a being of peaceful living consciousness. And so very gently, I then, step by step, guide my awareness to how my body is feeling. I take a few more deep breaths. I connect with my physical surroundings, carrying with me the energy of peace. Thank you. So, all good wishes to experiment with this and let me know how it goes.
Thank you, Radha. Very nice session.
Thank you. Thank you all for your input.
Thank you, Radha.
Thanks, Al.
Bye-bye.